back, relax, and maybe get yourself a snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hey guys, so I'm here today to do a not so great video. This is going to be talking about the books that did not work for me this year so far. So all the books that I read this year that either I DNF'd because they just weren't for me, or they just didn't really get a very good rating, and why. So let's dive in. I've only got 6 on the list so far, thankfully, but yeah, let's get started. The first one I wanted to talk about is one I read really recently. That is The Beekeeper of Aleppo. Now, this particular story, it was for a book club, and I kind of thought when this was chosen that it might not be for me, and I tried to go in with an open mind and hope that it would kind of turn it around. It's a very depressing read because it is focusing on the war and refugees of the war in Syria. Quite an introspective read. We're following the account of what happened to this man and his wife as they tried to leave Syria, but also kind of what was happening whilst they were there, what was going on around them. I don't know a huge amount about the war. I know bits and pieces and some stuff that I've looked into myself, but obviously I haven't experienced it, so I thought this was going to be quite a sad read, and it is. There are some really horrific things that happen very early on in the book, but I personally just didn't believe in this character. I didn't feel like they were genuine, and I didn't feel like the things he was doing or saying really meant anything. I felt like he was a fake character. Yeah, he didn't feel like a character that I could get behind and I could believe in. So for that reason, I just felt like this book wasn't working very well. And then it was quite a slow read as well. As I say, it's a lot of introspection. The characters are constantly thinking about the past, or reminiscing, or just kind of living in their heads a little bit more than actually having any action going on, and that doesn't always work for me, and in this case it really didn't. I found it quite boring and quite dull, and even though the things that are going on are kind of shocking, it's like a dull shocking, which doesn't sound very good, does it? I just didn't think this worked for me, really. So yeah. DNF. Next up I had Age of Ash, which was a Daniel Abrahams book. Now, I've read other books by him and I have DNF'd them as well, so I didn't know if this was going to be an improvement, and unfortunately for me it just didn't feel like the writing was strong enough. I personally felt like there were other books that just I wanted to read a lot more, and this one, although I think I got to about maybe a third of the way through, it really just wasn't drawing my attention, and I just felt like I wanted to read other things. I wasn't interested. I felt like the concept I'd seen a lot of times in other ways and better ways, and that for me is a little bit of a turn off. I didn't feel connected to the characters in this one. I felt like everything was a little bit too convenient and I wasn't really enjoying the plot as a whole. So yeah, I just decided it's not for me. I'm going to DNF it. I'm going to go read stuff I'm actually interested in. So again, a DNF. Next up I had Violet, which was a workbook club book. Now, this was a thriller. Again, thrillers are very hit and miss. If I can predict where it's going, then I tend to not enjoy them that much, and this was a case of that. It was an okay story, it was fine, but for me personally, I saw where it was going and I didn't really enjoy reading it after that, because I kind of knew where we were going and I kind of anticipated how we would get there, and we did. We followed kind of what I thought. So it wasn't a surprise, it wasn't that exciting, it just got 2 stars. It was okay. It was nothing special for me personally. Next up I had The Fowl Twins. Now, this is a new series by an author that I've previously read, Owen Colfer, and I've really enjoyed his previous series, but this series just wasn't for me. I think it's because it's a companion series, and the original series for me, the Artemis Fowl series, was fantastic. It was one of my childhood series that I loved and still probably would love if I went and reread, although I haven't tried doing that, but I reckon I'd still very much enjoy it. I kind of wish that this series never existed, because I was very excited when I found out it did exist, because I was like, oh my gosh, he's going back to this world, it's going to be great. But then I read this and it was just very okay. Like, there was nothing special, and the previous series just felt so much stronger and so much more interesting. This series focuses on 2 twin brothers who are Artemis's younger siblings. I didn't love them as characters. I felt like each of them felt very flat, and they kind of would have worked well as one character, but they were almost like a copy of Artemis in 2 people, and I just didn't think it worked. I didn't think it was necessary. I didn't think it added anything to the world, or yeah, it was just okay. It was an okay story, but it really wasn't anything special. So again, 2 stars. Next up, I had Mexican Gothic, which loads of people enjoy and loads of people love. But for me, the Mexican bit was kind of missing, and it was very much more Gothic, which is fine. It's just not what I expected. There was very little Mexican culture in this, or Mexican lifestyle kind of creeping through. It was largely focused on an English family who had emigrated out to Mexico and their life out there, and the creepy house that they live in, which seems to kind of trap people as part of it, and what's going on. Now, it is a kind of mystery, I suppose, but for me, the main character didn't really interest me. She was a little bit all over the place, and maybe a little bit naive as well. So I didn't love her anyway, and then the plot is somewhat predictable. I don't love stories where I can kind of see the ending, and I definitely could in this one, in terms of the romance and in terms of bits and bobs of the story. Now, I will say that what the big mystery is, I didn't see coming, but I also didn't feel like it was very believable in this world. So take that how you will. For me, it didn't work. Again, this was a book club one. Book club ones are very hit and miss with me when I don't choose them, and this was the case here. It was a one that I read for a Waterstones book club, and it wasn't the best, alas. Next up, and the final one on my list, is A Kingdom of Flesh and Fire, which actually is a very interesting book to talk about because I gave it 2 stars, and yet this is part of a series where I did a full review of the series, or at least the books that were out at the time. I think there's more out now, which I've not read yet, but it's a series where I didn't want to like it as I was reading it. It was just addictive. And what I mean by that is, like, I could tell it was trash. Like, I could tell that loads of things in this series were just not things I liked and not things that were really interesting to me, and I didn't really want to keep reading, and yet I was kind of compelled. I was kind of addicted to reading it and finding out what's going to happen, even though, like, it wasn't written very well, and it's not a great story, and there's lots of bits that I didn't agree with or like, and I still wanted to read the series. So it's a really weird one, but I think I probably will continue on with this series, even though I gave this 2 stars, and even though I've done a whole video being like, why did I keep reading this? I don't understand. But I kind of answered why I kept reading in that video, and I kind of answered it again here, I guess. It is addictive. It's like trash TV, or reality shows that you don't want to like and you don't want to enjoy, but you do because they're just drama and they're exciting, and you're like, oh, I've got to find out what happens next now. I've got to watch another episode or read another book. It's very much that. So 2 stars, just an okay read, yet thoroughly addictive and made me want to keep going. So let me know your thoughts on these books. You may have very different opinions to me, and hopefully you've enjoyed them more than I have. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Are there any other books that you guys have read this year which you ended up DNFing, or which you didn't enjoy and you thought you would? Leave me in the comments below all of your book suggestions, or books that have been a bit disappointing. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon in another video. Bye everyone.
Thank you for watching my video today. Go pick up a book, then come back and chat with me again.